Resident Evil Requiem has had huge reviews, especially from players, one of the highest player rated games on Metacritic of all time now. And as usual, we're going to take a deep dive here on post game clarity, but we're not going to give it, at least I'm not going to give it the huge praise that it's gotten so far, because I think there are very real flaws that nobody's discussing from this game. And it's a good game. Is it a great one? Is going to be the question. So I want to start with you guys, Nymaera and Jamada joining me. What's the thing you like most about this game? And what's the thing you liked least about this game to start things off?
Okay, so my favorite thing about this game is that it set itself the task of being a blend of both styles of Resident Evil games that we've seen throughout the entire franchise. The classic kind of run and gun, action zombie, survival. And then we got through to the era of 7 and Village, or 7 and 8, with Ethan Winters as the protagonist, where it was much more about first-person view, survival horror, being able to avoid enemies and kind of work your way around them rather than being a super powerful, super confident action hero. I loved how they blended those styles of gameplay. I love the split between the two deuteragonists of this game, playing both sides of the Resident Evil franchise. I think they did that seamlessly. I think it was very ambitious, and I think it worked out.
To build off of Nymaera's point too, I think for me, it was a lot more about how they decided to go about Leon's gameplay. I think there was a lot of ways they actually could have probably taken it, given, well, anyone who's a long-time franchise fan, Resident Evil 6, and I don't have to say much more than that. I think returning to the over-the-shoulder, but the much more closer to RE4 remake style of gameplay, and then actually doing things like adding the sharpening mechanic, even though it's a bit goofy if you think about the reality of pulling out a whetstone.
The tactical whetstone.
The tactical whetstone. But from an actual gameplay standpoint, I thought it didn't. I liked it. I thought it made a fair amount of sense. Though there were things for me that I feel like they could have pressed more to squeeze a bit more out of that gameplay that I think a lot of people enjoyed out of RE4 Remake. I think the overall direction of just kind of sticking on the rails with that and not trying to change the wheel too much, because people already loved RE4 Remake, was probably my favorite thing, or one of my favorite things out of what we got from Leon in this game.
I love the Leon sections as well. They're my favorite parts. Since you guys are afraid of saying the bad parts, apparently, I think all of the great parts are terrible.
Okay, in what way are they terrible? Because I'm going to pick... Okay, all right, for those of you listening in now, we're going to have some battle lines drawn. What did you not like about Grace's gameplay? I'm a horror game connoisseur. I love me some horror survival. I enjoyed Grace's gameplay.
You're setting yourself up for something dangerous if you do that. A horror specialist is
enthusiast, Jamada. Enthusiast.
Okay.
So here's what I don't like about Grace's gameplay. We'll get into all of these individually, but... I find her character to be incredibly contrived and one note. So I don't like her character. Number 2, the puzzles in Grace's section are poor and don't respect your intelligence. Number 3, it's just not scary. I don't know what to tell you guys. And I'll tell you exactly why it's not scary in this game, because it basically relies on Chekhov's guns, which don't work in games. So there's no real surprise or shock or tension, because you can easily predict what's going to happen before it happens, which just makes it not scary.
Those are some very interesting points. I enjoyed.
So what did you like about the game?
What did I like? So I really enjoyed.
Didn't
enjoy about it. Okay. Well, I didn't enjoy it. Okay. Right.
Can't glaze it forever.
I think that I'm going to leverage off of what you said about the character there. I really enjoyed this. This is important. I enjoyed the starting point of most characters in this game. I think most characters degraded in quality over the course of the game. I think particularly as we got through to Act 3, some of the stuff in the Act 1 was really, really good. I love the flashback scene. I love the stuff in the hotel. I think there was some really good moments there. That was clearly a very well envisaged set piece. You compare that to Act 3, where it feels like characters have just fallen apart. It feels like the story is a bit of a placeholder for you to do cool things. The things were really cool, and I liked them. That's fine. But there does have to be a suspension of disbelief for you to be immersed into those things. And there were points that I'm like, there has to be limits, right? as much as I appreciate popping a wheelie on a skyscraper, and that was actually one of my favorite parts of the game. It did just make me take a step back, and go like, that sure was something, wasn't it? There were definitely parts about that throughout the entire game, and I think that, I think that the nuance got lost throughout the game. Where I thought actually the game started with it, it lost it as it went on. I was a little bit disappointed by that.
You know, there are parts of it though. For me, I'm very fresh to the RE franchise. I actually for this episode, I played through a majority of the numbered Resident Evils. The only ones I've not played as of the recording right now, I'm in the middle of 5, which, goddamn, this game feels like it's going to suck, but the story is probably going to be passable. And 6, which I hear universally, generally, I say universally and then universally it seems pretty hated on a lot of fronts. Mostly
People
because
like
of the dip into horror.
into
action.
Of game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's really what I want to talk about there with what you said, because I feel like Capcom have seemingly been struggling to find that really nice tightrope on the fence, delivering to the RE fans who want action and like horror action and then survival horror, because the franchise started, with effectively that survival horror, and then it kind of shifted over time, right? I think 4 was the first one where, you had the turret controls, over the shoulder, stand still, pop the enemies as they come towards you. And so ever since then, and obviously the evolution of that has been trying to find a balance where you satisfy all parties. And I think in this game, this is probably the closest they're ever going to get. And I feel like moving forward, if we do get more installments,
they're at least doing more DLC for this game, as far as we know. I'm not sure about other stuff beyond that.
So I would expect that if they have to, they will split sections up like they did in this game. They will cut and carve parts up where it's like, okay, maybe in RE10 you get to play as Chris Redfield, right? And that's going to play exactly like it does with Leon Kennedy. And then maybe you go to kind of a, let's say Jill Valentine Reses, right? She's back, wonderful. We're doing like a mixture of both where we're just going to completely under-resource her and she has to survive through this like horrible thing. So I think in the sense of RE9, they've gotten as close as they can probably get to that balance of satisfying the actual consumers of Resident Evil. That said, the peaks of the action, like even normally I like to get very immersed in games. I'll keep myself, it's why, like for me, I actually found the horror scary, but I'm a bit of a big baby. That said, when Leon went up that skyscraper, even I went, all right, come on, this is a bit silly. Like I've seen him roundhouse.
I was hooting and hollering. I loved
I've
it.
seen him roundhouse people's heads off. I've seen him jump into, a proclaimed god in RE4 and like aura nuke the guy before blowing it up with an RPG. The skyscraper thing for me, and I don't know what's in RE6, but the skyscraper thing for me was like, all right, they had to put like one really goofy thing in there, and it felt like that was the moment they had to let pass.
And that's the thing that I enjoy about the Leon parts is I don't shy away from the campiness. And contrary to you guys, because you guys now have a long history with the franchise, I literally haven't played a Resident Evil game in 30 years, since the original PlayStation games, basically. And by the way, in just a couple of weeks, Resident Evil 1 is turning 30 years old. So there's a big anniversary for the first game on PlayStation coming up, because it came out in 96. So this is a game that I played maybe as a young teenager. I don't really remember. So I don't have any nostalgia for this franchise. My eyes are unclouded. And I know that this was very popular with many Resident Evil fans, but I want to take a really hard perspective on this as someone who doesn't necessarily care about this particular game in the scope of Resident Evil. I came to this because of the hype around this game, because of the fact that it's selling millions and millions of copies. It's been very financially successful. The reviews have been excellent. But I do think that people are really actively ignoring the flaws in this game. And I do think this is a good game. At the end of the day, there's a lot to like about it. And I think there's especially a lot to like about it if you love Resident Evil. But if you don't love Resident Evil, I think it's important that people are out there saying, hey, be aware of the flaws in this game, and we can actually critically evaluate this as games as art without, being overwhelmed by the waves of nostalgia, which is what I've seen in a lot of these reviews. And to your point, like, I think that it could be a campy horror action game and be really fun. I like the over-the-top gore. I like it when Leon is cut in half by a beam and his guts are dangling out. Like, it's funny and entertaining. I was trying to die many times in this game just to watch the monsters eat
I
my
made that
head,
excuse. Honestly, it was a bit of a skill issue at points. I think probably my worst point during this game was I looked at an elevator in that one bit when you're in Raccoon City, and I was like, that looks like it's going to fall. And then Leon goes, oh, fuck. I'm like, that's going to fall. And then it starts moving. I'm like, I think I can move to the side quick enough. Gentlemen, I did not move to the side quick enough, and I got fucking splattered.
But I think, when I would see moments like that, I would intentionally die a lot of the time because I wanted to see the environmental gore, because that's part of the entertainment of the game. So I'm all on board with the Leon sequences. These were my favorite, and I know some people will say, well, Monty, why don't you just play Resident Evil 4 Remake? And maybe I will, because that's what's most fun.
You should. I think you should. I think it was one of the first things when I watched you playing through the series. I was like, okay, if you enjoyed Leon this much, play RE4 Remake. Like, it's going to be awesome for you. Especially because that middle section, or I suppose the first real Leon section that we get, that's extended, is effectively like his version of the mansion, right? In Raccoon City. RE4 is basically 2.5/3 big versions of that on repeat, with great exploration and replayability. So yeah, like it's incredible. Yeah, you should.
Yeah, and I think the handling in the Leon section is really good. It feels very fun to play through with the different weapons and be able to customize them according to how you want to play. There's multiple ways to approach situations. There's ways to use the enemy intelligence to kill them via environment. I think like this is, you have to approach different enemies differently. I think the Leon sections are very entertaining. I do think it's surface level in terms of story, and I think the problem some of the Leon sections run into is that it just references things in other games that I have no emotional connection to. So when he goes back to the Raccoon City Police Department, I don't know what happened there. So for
at
me,
that point, it is a sequel, though.
There's no nostalgia. So I'm like, all right, I'm here, I guess.
I think it's a bit moot, because I think as a cold caller to a franchise like RE with so many installments behind it, there is just a certain level of, you have to just accept you don't know the full relevance to the area.
Well, the alternate title for this game would have been Resident Evil Greatest Hits, because it's just everything the franchise has ever done.
But in fairness to that, I think they handle Leon's moments there in Raccoon City pretty damn well. Like, I think the revisit to RPD, his interactions with both even like the giant spider, I thought was hilarious. Like, once he's done with it, and the one line quip of what was it again? I think word for it is like, I've missed that Raccoon City hospitality, or whatever it was. Like, just from start to finish, from when he's there, you can tell he kind of wants to leave. And I think especially inside Raccoon City, the flashback to RE2 with Marvin, that was incredible. Just the moments, it just lets you know where the character's at in his head mentally. And I think even if you are a cold caller like you were, it's like, okay, this is a heavy thing for him. Even down to
this is where I want it to be, which is that I know there's more context, but I don't feel like I can't understand what's going on without that context. That was true of the Leon sections. I do not feel it was true of the Grace sections, where I think it has the Marvel problem of you having to have seen literally everything to understand what's going on, and things don't really exist in isolation.
No, I think actually no one really understood that. That was one of the problems.
Well,
I think
that's
everyone was a bit clueless
in some ways.
I think everyone was a little bit clueless, but also there were some aspects of, okay, this is like, we get it in a Leon cutscene where it's like, Victor is tied to Umbrella. Okay. So this is going to be like virus and blood stuff. Sure. Like, no problem. And if you pick up the file, hey, if you do your exploring and you pick up the files, you do learn a lot of this stuff, even down to things like, because I think he's criminally underrated. And I hopefully we kind of make this a section, because there are a couple of characters like this. But Zeno, the cool guy with the sunglasses, he's a Wesker clone. Like, it's very, very obvious he's supposed to be an Albert Wesker clone. And you learn, even though it's an established thing, they can make clones of people already, but you very specifically learn that this is a slightly more advanced version of the T-virus cloning process when you're in the blood facility underground, because there's a file on a computer that tells you that when you read it. So if you put those context pieces together, and then boom, the next cutscene is literally resurrected almost one-to-one Albert Wesker, but clearly not Albert Wesker. It's like, oh, okay, so that's what's going on. But I do feel like this Resident Evil, more than other installments, and again, I'm very fresh on all of this. I started playing at the beginning of February to get prepped for RE9. I think this game in particular is really guilty of leaving maybe just a bit too much context in some of the files, where it's like, okay, I played through the franchise, so I understand all of this, but if you're a cold cooler and you miss this file, it's like, oh, like if you're smart enough to put one on one together, you won't do it without the file, right? And I think that's one of those things.
It's not even, I am thorough in these games, and I go through and I want to read, and I'm interested in the narrative, and I'm interested in the story. But we can start there, which is that, you know, a lot of the clues that are scattered around don't actually lead anywhere. Think about all the files that are just talking about there's memory in the blood, and this is the next phase of human evolution.
Okay,
These
actually,
go nowhere.
So it doesn't go anywhere in this game. That's for sure. But unfortunately, that's a Resident Evil thing. Look, it's a sequential series, right? It's an ongoing story. I mean, hell, I even said towards the end of the game, once I was done, hey,
you do not get to pretend like you can't write a game that makes sense in and of itself and connects to other things.
But, okay, so funnily enough, I actually think the blood memory thing does actually explain itself, and I think it's actually in your face the whole time. Every single zombie in the mansion is moaning and murmuring about their old habits. So there's the guys like, turn out the lights and the whole stuff
and
like
the
that.
Cleaning stuff.
Exactly. All of the maids and all of the different people around there, and, you know, including the mini bosses as well, which are obviously much more advanced cases of like some very, very troubled people, basically. They all have this kind of, last attachment to their lingering humanity. That's the memory which is taken from the blood. I actually thought that was really nice. That's a nice bit of environmental storytelling.
That's just their memory from being alive. These were just the people doing their jobs while they were alive. The memory in the blood implies, in my opinion, that the clones were supposed to have the memory that they needed from Grace to unlock Elpis.
That's what they were looking for, yeah. When they were making those Grace clones, that's what they were trying to do. But I think it's also in relation to things like other, like, air quotes, bioweapon characters, right? So things like Wesker, things like Zeno, where it's
but it's not resolved.
They can bring back these people. No, for sure, it's not resolved inside of the.
But this is the issue: is that you have this idea of blood memory, but the reveal at the end of the game. So first off, am I supposed to? The Grace clone story is never resolved in any kind of satisfying manner, because Grace herself is not the first version of that clone. We're not even sure who the original was, because through the orphanage scene from 1990, Grace wasn't born in 1990. The game takes place in 2026. She's not in her mid-30s. So we know it's not her from the original. She would have had to have been older than that, right? Older than a, 6-7-year-old girl in 1990. So she would have had to have been born in 1983?
Yeah.
So
it's not
that
likely.
Old. And so she's actually like in her mid 40s. So she's not that old. So we know she can't be the original clone, and they're still making clones. So why with the blood memory thing, why would she have it but not other people have it if she's a clone? But also she, by the end, is not important and was never important, and Gideon and Zeno were wrong about her being important.
They mentioned that. They do mention that, though, because even Gideon, in his very messed up state towards the end of the game, he goes, the papers were never complete. We just filled in the gaps.
Yes.
They just did the stupid thing. Yeah. So, I'm not saying I agree with it.
That's a terrible twist. It's a terrible twist to set up all of the blood memory, human evolution stuff, and then I guess she's just not special. We were wrong at the end. What the fuck is that as writing?
Well, I do agree with that conclusion. What I'm actually kind of curious about, if they do anything with it at all, is they haven't really explained the fact that she got bit by an infected zombie at the start of the game.
Now, in a cutscene as well. It's okay in combat.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, gameplay, whatever, like, that's just a part of the... but in a cutscene, she got bit. And again, to reference actually that very same area I was talking about, the blood facility underground, you actually find Grace's blood results in And I'm actually wondering if one of the things, and it's not resolved in this game, and I get it, again, it's just going to be one of those things where it's like it could go completely unresolved for all we know. But she's a match for whatever they're looking for. She's a match in all of the categories.
Well,
and it kind of makes me wonder.
That's got to link into the whole thing that Elpis is. Yeah.
So is an antiviral. So this is actually my kind of working theory at the moment. I think while Spencer might not have inherently done anything weird to Grace in terms of like actual T-virus infection, etc., I think she just has Elpis, as in blood Elpis, hence the
oh my god,
thing.
She's Ellie from The Last of Us, you're telling me.
Yes, she's Ellie from The Last of Us.
Fuck me. Are you kidding me?
I know. But it's the only thing that makes sense for her to have been bitten and then not actually present any, so that would be the only reason why she would be important. And again, the misinterpretation from Victor on the paper of, okay, well, Grace is obviously important to Elpis in some capacity. Maybe she's the key to unlocking this like secret third underground umbrella corporation.
A secret third thing.
There's a third lab.
It's the second umbrella, parasol.
Jamada, I appreciate that you're into this and you like all these theories, but like at the end of the day, you can't. If you're me coming into this game and then having being interested in the storyline and thinking, oh, there's this cool clone narrative going on, and then having it completely unresolved and having the twist be, I'm Grace. There's nothing unique about me whatsoever. I'm just going to watch a video and know the password is just lame. It's just lame.
I think getting to the conclusion of the password was bad. Yeah. I've got to say.
And also the password being Hope. Because I thought, look, it would have been even more cheesy. But if you're going to lead into it, at least make the password Requiem, the title of the game, or something just like really go overboard with it. Hope just felt very generic.
Elpis
to me.
is literally the Greek goddess of hope, and then it's Hope. This is, as a sidebar, this is just one of those Japanese things where when they start interacting with Western religion or
just
mythology,
other culture, it's very always without fail. It's just super surface level.
It's the things like, so because it's foreign to Japan, right? They assume that, I think rightly so, that their core audience doesn't know about these things. However, if you are a Westerner who is raised in Christianity or Elpis, or like Greek mythology, you may know about these things. So it seems super obvious. One of the examples too that I think is very famous is like in Neon Genesis Evangelion. What they do is they load a bunch of Christian Gnostic and Kabbalah stuff, which is like, ooh, crazy mystical stuff for the Japanese, but I'm like, actually, I've studied this, and so
do you want a more recent example of this? So if either of you watch, it's a really big anime. If you watch Frieren, very famous anime released in the last
I know
couple
what
of
it
years.
is.
No,
okay. So Frieren, I live in Germany. I've been learning German for the last however many years now. Basically, every character's name in Frieren is a single, very simple German word, where you have characters who are literally called, like, strong in German. Or you have them literally being evil or liar in German. Just the German word for that. Because like we sometimes do that in English too, right? Where like particularly over the last decade, some people it's like it sounds cool and it's got some baseline thing. I'm an English dev and I'm gonna be like researching into this culture. I'm just gonna look up on
like
the dictionary.
The Japanese kanji tattoo, man. If you're just like a
soup.
Yeah. Anyway, it's either here nor there. But I do, when the password's Hope, and then you have this Greek mythological reference to Hope, it's just kind of like, this is the dumbest puzzle of all time. It's just the problem is there's just a 1-to-1 correlation, right? And again, I think this is just a factor of it being made by Japanese game devs, and we've all come to accept this as my point in game dev and anime. But it is funny. It is funny. But anyway, back to the plot. I mean, this is all of this stuff I find interesting, where you talk about how Zeno is this potential Wesker clone. But again, I don't need it to be extremely explicit, but we need some sort of movement in the story. And the reveal not only of Grace just not being important kind of throws away all of the foreshadowing that was done earlier in the game. And then on top of that, you have an actual Deus Ex Machina reveal of Elpis, where, it's a panacea. It cures everything. And then it solves all the problems in the game. And Leon stands up and everybody claps as he kills Gideon.
Okay. I'll add some extra stuff there because I actually think that's I thought it was pretty good because it's quite clear. It's right from the start of it. Leon's character arc is he's going to struggle with this illness and he's got to find some way to survive through it. Resi doesn't do a big habit of killing its protagonist. We weren't expecting him to die, but if they did, it would have been absolute pandemonium. By the way, that would have been absolutely huge.
Choose the other ending. It's
True.
pretty good.
If you choose the destroy Elpis thing. But by the way, actually, I'm going to cut in with something else here because I was talking to a friend who was a longtime player of the Resi franchise, and this is really interesting because she ended up choosing the destroy ending because of the history of Spencer within the franchise. If you don't know who Spencer is, Spencer effectively invented this world's version of nukes. Like the BOWs, the bioorganic warfare stuff was just bioorganic weapons and BOWs. They are every country's version of nukes. These things are the apex of warfare, the apex of everything. In fact, we see multiple times across the series, Umbrella basically developing stuff to try and lead forwards human evolution in a very kind of, it's very Nazi. It's very Nazi, and Spencer is heading that up. But we see this starting to be sold off to different militaries, eaten bit and piecemeal by piecemeal, and everyone starts to get their hands on this, much like, again, in 20th century, kind of like the race towards the atomic weapons. So my friend who ended up playing through this game chose to destroy Elpis because if you've really played the franchise, it was so hard for a lot of people to believe that Spencer, the most evil person in the Resident Evil franchise, could have heel turned in like a handful of cutscenes and truly turned a new page. That was a real sticking point for a lot of people who thought that it went against Spencer's character. And I have to say that has been a sticking point in the Resi community.
I have 2 points on that too. The first, because I'm part spoiled on the games I haven't played. In 5, he has something akin to the lines of, I am a god, right? So this is the kind of man that we're dealing with to deal with, viruses and such.
He wanted to lead human evolution to its next step and be the god of new humanity.
And so the other point is then kind of on the grander RE discussion, not to lead us down that path, but with this point specifically, is that it really seems like Capcom are erasing the stories of the original releases, and now as they remake these prior installations, those are going to be the actual canon events of the game. A la, you look at the fact that they reuse the cutscenes from RE2, right? The RE2 remake, rather. If there was reason to have RE3 cutscenes in there, they probably would have done the same thing. And just overall, it seems like the direction of the franchise is leading to, hell, even RE1, right? Monte, you said earlier, the 30th anniversary is this year. They might do a remake of the remake, but just have it be over the shoulder or first person horror. That is a realistic thing they could keep under the hood until the anniversary.
And the difference being that a lot of it was fixed camera in a point in the room.
Exactly. For clarity, if you'd never played the originals, it's fixed camera, like Nymaera was
Silent
saying.
Hill was very similar to it. It was that era of horror game was very much choose the camera angle and play it like that.
Exactly. And even certain social posts, if you want to look into all that, they're even maybe looking at doing 5 very soon, and even including Wesker, air quotes, fake Wesker in this game for seemingly no good reason other than he's there to aura farm and to have hype moments.
That is most of the characters in this
which is most of the characters in this game, but him specifically, he didn't do anything else. He actively almost didn't progress the story in a meaningful way.
7 scenes, that's all I can give you. 7 scenes.
That's all he did. So it does seem like there's a bit of an erasure of, effectively the original stories in favor of, Capcom have acknowledged that the story is very convoluted outside of even just the numbered installations. And they're just looking at going back through the entire thing up to 6 and just going, maybe we're going to have, maybe Spencer will come to some kind of realization that maybe all this shit's bad. But it's going to happen in that 5th game remake,
but
allegedly.
Why do we need to retroactive? Here's my question. Again, I don't know anything. So the thing is that this game spends all this time retroactively redeeming Spencer's character without showing me that he's evil. You know what I mean? All of the scenes
Yeah,
are
that's
just
fair,
like,
actually.
I
Yeah.
have a baby now, and I feel bad about what I did. I mean, that's what I see of Spencer. I don't see I'm a god Spencer. So the whole thing just feels real weird to me.
I agree, and it felt very left-hand field for me as a, I don't know, I want to say like a warm caller. I've been saying cold caller. Like I'm not super versed, but I'm versed enough to understand this story quite well, and its place in it. Yeah, it just doesn't really make sense to what goes on in the first handful of games, and then especially 5, which is really the peak, the apex of that. Like, I am evil. I want humans to evolve into this, Spencer that we get in that title. So they're gonna have to do a lot of heavy lifting, and I think even in other franchises anyway, you see this kind of these longer standing ones. If they feel like they've got something which is very convoluted, they do tend to retconning has just become, unfortunately, in some cases, very, very common. And I think this is probably an area where, for the Resident Evil that I've consumed, it's probably for the better of the longevity of the franchise, because you're working with almost 3.5 generations of gamers, right? And so now, from Resident Evil 7, which I think was 2017, to now, this is probably the tightest you're ever gonna have all of these generations of gamers following the same story. So if they're gonna actually whack out these remakes, excuse the voice crack, in a very
No, I won't, Jamada. What do you mean?
if they whack these remakes out and these new titles out in a timely manner, let's say they get 5 and 6 out before the end of 2030,
they've pretty much caught up with the story. Then
they pretty much caught up with the story, and they've retold the Resident Evil numbered franchise how they want to tell it. And I think for most core audience fans, as long as it doesn't disturb the sanctity of the, extracurricular games, right? Then it's fine. And it seems like more or less they're trying to respect that anyway. So again, as dumb as it is that Spencer randomly decided to come to the conclusion of, yeah, I'm a good guy now because I adopted a child and I didn't commit experiments on it. I can live with it. You know what? I can live with it if they actually turn out fine.
My horrible Nazi experiments. My sins have been absolved because I have this baby and then I died and gave it to a rando chick.
Yeah. And I have to say,
it's going to be a hard turn. It's going to be a hard turnaround.
So, I mean, I don't really know what they were doing with Grace in this story. I really like the introduction of it. I actually thought that the first act of this game, I actually thought was very strong. I know that you talked about the character of Grace being something that really grated on you, Monte, and it did on me too. But I thought particularly in the hotel with the flashback scene and then the very extreme emotions that were showed there, I was really excited to figure out what had happened to Grace. Why was she important? Now, I thought that actually in the opening acts of those things, with the first zombie that you see, the poker through the eye was brutal and visceral. And I really thought the voice acting in that scene was fantastic with the really guttural screams. And then, of course, with the flashback to the mother being killed as well. I was sat there being like, oh my God, I'm really believing a lot of these emotions on show there. I was disappointed that I don't really think we got a satisfying answer to the questions posed at the beginning of the game. Look, I thought that, like we said, Leon, you don't really need that character development.
Because by the time we get to she's a baby who is being adopted, I'm like, okay, so she's a clone, but she's a later clone than the Chloe clone, but an earlier one than the Emily clone. So, and then maybe she was the one that wasn't experimented on because that's when Spencer started feeling bad. So maybe she was the last version of those clones, and then she was given away and allowed to live a normal life. But then Gideon and Zeno started making more clones later on to then restart the clone experimentation. I just thought we'd get some resolution on these issues, right?
And she's not the only character which had a disappointing end too, I don't think, because I thought that, well, Spencer's one thing, right? But I actually think that, Zeno, I think they massively underutilized him. Not a single boss fight with the guy with crazy superpowers. Come on, look, that's a sitting duck.
I do think it's funny that Victor just rocks up and then just murks him.
But that's all Victor is there for. Victor is there. It's like, hello, I am the boss fight now. What do you mean? This guy goes against. By the way, I got to jump into this because Victor ignores Spencer's last wish, his master, the person he talks about this whole game, and he's like, I'm going to create Elpis, I'm going to release it, and then Victor's like, no, I'm going to go against the wishes of my master who have been following the entire game. What the fuck? This guy was really strong at the start of the game too. I loved his whispered, considered, very imposing physicalness as well. He was really good in the opening act. Why the fuck is he getting shot off a motorcycle?
I thought this was going to be like some Metal Gear Solid 2 vamp fight where he's super fast and you have to do something. I just started laughing because the Deus Ex Machina just like pops out. Here's Elpis, and he's like, ugh! And then he's like, oh, and then Victor just rocks up and just kills it, just one shots him. Like, I guess this character was useless. He was just there to look cool. I just can't. I also just can't handle this character, this anime style character design, where he's just wearing this.
Oh, I really like his design. I love that shit. I love that.
No, I hate it.
Look, it looks cool,
he's
but
like
I
smoking
can't like
a cigarette while his arms next to his overcoat. I was like, bro, just put on the coat or take it off, please. And then he's wearing this ridiculous tie chain, and he has this antique pistol. It's so extra.
Look, this is set up to be a Like a Dragon boss fight where he's got this really cool coat, and he just like all of it flies off. He's covered in tattoos. He's there with like a revolver.
But it doesn't happen because he just gets one shot by Gideon.
Which is a shame because I was really looking forward to what they would do with this character. I thought, the fact that there is a Wesker cloak, Wesker, perhaps, again, context outside of this game, Wesker is fucking terrifying. That guy took forever to die because he was all the way back in the original games. He was the mastermind of a lot of things. He is superhuman, as we can see with Zeno as well. The fact that they introduced this didn't really let us interact with him and not have that boss fight. That was deeply unsatisfying. And then they replaced that fight, I think they kind of replaced that fight and was set up for it with the Victor Gideon fight, where I thought, well, I don't see the motivation of Victor at this point, because I feel like Spencer had been like, Elpis was the goal. Okay, you've done the Elpis thing. Why are you trying to kill people beyond the conclusion of that? And it just be a look. And then also the fact that he's a nemesis as well, just to be, again, bring back the greatest hits thing, like the nemesis from Resident Evil 3. All of that just felt like this is placeholder to do cool stuff. The cool stuff is great. I love the cool stuff in this game, but the story, I don't think it would have been that hard to make the story more coherent around some of the character motivations in the late game. And that's the thing which really annoys me. Because just the record, I really enjoyed this game. But those bits really annoyed me.
All right. Well, I think like the flaws in the story are clear. Let's talk about something else that was good, which is the graphics of this game. Like, it's on the RE engine. It looks insane. It runs so well. It feels really good to see a game that isn't made in Unreal, that has a different,
oh my God,
that has a different look, that feels more purpose made for this game because of the way that light and dark really work in the engine to have this horror atmosphere. Even the start of the game, before you even get into the horror sections, when you're just on the street, these games, I guess, are supposed to be in the Midwest, so I guess it's supposed to be like the elevated train tracks in Chicago. But for me, there's, I used to live in Brooklyn in New York, and this looks like where I lived in Brooklyn with the elevated train track and the stores, and it looked phenomenal. I was really very pleasantly surprised. Not to say that Capcom, which uses the RE engine for, basically all their games, hasn't made good looking games before, but I think this game in particular is the best looking one. And the way it ran too, just flawless. I was playing on PS5 and it flawlessly. And I was just super impressed by the visuals in this game and the way that it handled and the gameplay and everything like that. It was just a very polished product.
Yeah, I've really got to agree. And I think especially I play a handful of titles, relatively regularly that are all in Unreal, and you there's always things you notice, right? Whether it's texture popping, whether it's things actually just popping in straight up, right? Like actual pop in, that will break that level of immersion. And I don't think I had a single instance. I played it on PC, unlike you guys both played it on PS5. I played it on the PC. I can't remember a single instance where I thought, oh, that looked bad. Like everything in this game looked pretty damn good. And I think more importantly, it ran smooth. Like I didn't experience a single crash. I didn't even have areas where I had stutters. These are all things which, on if this was in Unreal, I think the Raccoon City area in particular would have struggled with that level of detail that we ended up getting.
I think the advantage of Unreal is that obviously it's opened up a lot of ability to produce games that might not have otherwise been produced, right? It allows you to have smaller teams. You don't have to develop a proprietary engine, but the sameness does come through, and this actually breaks through it, I think, really nicely.
And I think one of the reasons why people get tired of this, and okay, no, you got to go before that. Why do so many games get made in Unreal, and why is it so hard to make Unreal games feel different? There are so many base animations which are really well done on the whole, but it's really hard to replace. So, for instance, movement animations, I believe for like a base mesh, there's something like 140 movement animations. Now, doing all that shit yourself is a lot of work. One of the great things about Unity and Unreal, I did spend a little bit of time in game dev. I started a course from that, so I dipped my toes into it. Is the basis of game design is make your life easy. Use the stuff that's there. Anything you've used in other projects, you tend to bring forwards if it tends to work like that. So committing to, particularly in today's day and age where dev cycles are so long, people have kind of folded their own engines. Most companies have now. I mean, Halo, they've gone through some real trials and tribulation with their own engines. Pretty much every major franchise has fallen back onto something else at this point. It's really nice to see a well-crafted game, time and effort, no Gen AI stuff either, which I think would be very easy to slip into, and make a real quality game. It feels very good. And one of the best things in terms of the atmosphere for me, because I actually really enjoyed the Grace sections because of that atmosphere in the horror environment, particularly when you go into the basement as Grace. That is some of the very best horror atmospherics I've ever seen. I think I have to compare it to Alien Isolation, my favorite horror game of all time, one of my favorite games of all time. Particularly the volumetric lighting, where you have a flashlight in front of you and like the cone of light kind of blots out everything behind it. It keys into one of the most important parts of any horror genre, which is how much information is the player getting. As a horror genre, you need to have a restricted amount of information. So in that extra area, whatever threat there is can play about and gives you that sense of threat because you don't know what's there. Using basic things like the audio cues, which were excellent, the volumetric lighting, which means that while things are in the cone, yes, very visible, everything outside of that starts to blot out because your human eyes don't get to see beyond that. I thought that was masterful. This is a very well-built game.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because now we can talk about
the Grace section.
Hey, before people get mad, well, they're going to get mad no matter what. Because I'm gonna say some very
them.
I'm gonna say some very true things that are going to cause certain people who love this game to have some conflicts in their mind that are unresolvable.
Do you have a list, Monte? Is it a list?
Don't bring the list.
I think the easiest thing to do will be, bring up your 3-4 like biggest.
There's gonna be more than that, Jamada. There's gonna be more.
That's why I said 3 or 4. Like we could probably be here for a while.
We go.
So
you ready?
Come on.
Oh, hit me.
Prepare your defenses.
Oh God, go. Just go
on this game. All right. Yep. And before I start, I know, guys, that I've read interviews with the directors and producers of this game. I know what they're trying to do. So before you're like, well, Monte, they wanted to have the two different styles of gameplay to make the pacing varied. I don't want varied pacing. I just want a good game. Okay. And the Grace sections are not scary, the puzzles are dumb, and Grace is a lame character. So let's start with Grace is a lame, cliched character. All right, here we go. So the game starts. You're a dweeby FBI waif, okay? And you have suffered extreme PTSD from your mother getting, as we find out, her throat cut open in front of you in this hotel years ago. All right, so now you're an FBI agent. Now, what is an FBI agent? Well, you have a master's degree. You've done field training, even if you are a little nerd. And so your FBI boss comes to you and he says, you know what, Grace Ashcroft, you need to go investigate this murder by yourself at night in the hotel where your mother died. No backup. Ha ha ha. Like, what is first off, what is
he's the real villain.
Setup.
He's the real villain.
He's the real villain. Which, by the way,
Jamada,
this is another problem with the narrative. I thought by the end it'd be like
it's capitalism all over again.
I thought by the end it would be like the FBI guy would show up and be like, "Haha, I too am part of the connections and the plot. That's why I sent you there alone." But at the end of the game, it's just like, "Welcome back, Grace. Like, are you the worst boss of all time?
Where's my report?" Yeah.
That's why
I've got it. Like, yeah.
it's so unbelievably cringe. And so I'm walking there, and you literally run into a police officer, and instead of being like, "Hey, officer, can you just come with me and maybe explain what happened at this crime scene?" No, he just jump scares you later as a zombie. It's so dumb. So her character setup is just so stupid. And I have to assume that Grace is just some kind of idiot through this entire game, because surely Grace would say, why don't can I have some backup? Can we send like a team in there? Why am I going alone into the site of my most personal extreme trauma in order to investigate this murder? Thoughts?
No,
That's
there's
the
no
setup
defense
for this game, and it is
I'll be
terrible.
honest. There's no defense for actually getting her to the hotel.
Okay,
Again, I'm going to be honest. There isn't one.
The
No,
whole point is that all
yeah.
the Grace sections are incredibly contrived to have her max. It's like she's in a torture machine to maximize her own personal suffering, and it's stupid. It's just stupid.
Aren't we all within modern society? I think this is important symbolism.
I mean,
but
look,
this is like, you again, people say, well, it's the contrast, Monty. It's not the contrast, because meanwhile, Leon's just like, I'm going to make jokes and hit zombies in the head with my hatchet. And I'm like, all right, I'm in for this. But
it's
the
worth
contrast
noting that Leon
between
didn't start out
just
like
having
that
a great
either.
time,
yeah.
dodging RPGs on a motorcycle, and Grace being like, what's going on?
You know what actually gets better than that, by the way? Hang on. I actually don't have a clip of this. You know that in the final boss fight, Leon can actually parry rockets.
Yeah, he can.
Exactly.
He actually can.
He can
knock RPGs out of the air. I didn't get to that point in the fight because I just no-diffed him, but you can parry RPGs.
I understand that people may want, or the directors of the game may have wanted to create this contrast. However, the contrast is incredibly jarring in a negative way for me.
Okay, for you. Okay, so the whole setup, that's a strong point. I don't necessarily have a rebuttal for that bit. I think realistically, there has to be a setup to get to the hotel. Beyond that point, she's kidnapped from there. What are you going to do? She's kidnapped. I think that, yeah, realistically, they maybe just have been like, send the officer in with you, and they're like, oh, I'm going to hang around here. I'm going to check the perimeter. You'd be okay inside here. Yeah, there's ways to make it a little bit
just send
better,
an extra
quite easily,
FBI
right?
agent
even
that dies.
Or even like if Grace got to the point where she found that picture of herself with the key, and then she didn't tell the other person that's inside of her, and she went up there by herself. Even that I would have been okay with, but the fact that she went in fully alone, I think is like really, really, really.
Also, she doesn't
creepy.
push back on her boss. I would have even been down for, she had some, she had repressed the memory, so she didn't know that this is where her mother got murdered, and she by being in the environment again.
Or it happened when she was like younger.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Like if it was like, because they paint her as a kind of a late adolescent teen, maybe.
I think she's about
17,
16, I think, at that point.
Yeah, maybe even
ago,
16.
Yeah.
If it was like, okay, maybe she was about 11 or 10, that's something at that point in your mid-20s or whatever, however old she's supposed to be. I could be like, okay, I can suspend my disbelief a little bit, and it's like you repress those memories of what happened in
It's
that
also
place.
that her boss knows about this and says, I know this is hard for you, as if there aren't thousands of other FBI agents to send to investigate. Like, what? We never even understand why she's the one who has to go. So anyway,
she just
I
had
don't
the
want to
shift
belabor
that
this
day,
point. It's
Monte.
obviously
Okay. I'm going to accept that. Okay, and this is fine. Look, by the way, there's a lot that I can accept is wrong with this game. We'll get towards the end of this at some point. I know there's a lot coming from it.
So then she gets kidnapped and then put into the hospital. Which, by the way, I know that they're just trying to get her blood, but Gideon then spends the entire hospital sequence. So she's running around in what Gideon, I presumably knows, because he's in there too, is a very dangerous environment. So bear with me. Who is the key to what Gideon has been spending like decades doing? Oh, it's Grace. But he knows she's just running around the hospital with a bunch of chainsaw zombies. Does he care?
Well, at that point, he's dealing with Leon, right? Because things go awry when she breaks free and then Leon breaks her out too.
But but you don't deal with Leon. You get Grace to Raccoon City. That's your main objective. Wait, what is Gideon doing? He's just letting her just
He's
wander
having, a very
around with
steamy
zombies?
scene with Leon S. Kennedy, and I think we can all appreciate that.
Anyway, that's actually, I think it's just a minor point. But what the fuck is Gideon doing? So the Grace scenes.
Yeah.
So just as a character, we get this really bizarre setup where Grace is unable. This is the problem: is that by not standing up to this situation that any normal human being would stand up to, she's shown as spineless. And she's not a believable FBI agent. Certainly some FBI agents are desk jockeys. But to have her, who has been through psychological training, field training, just spend the entire game. And I think the actress does do a really good job of being scared. But the problem is that the direction is you are always scared. You never have any agency. You never have any courage. So you just, Leon's out there like, haha, these pups need more training after machine gunning a bunch of zombie dogs on a freeway while jumping his motorcycle. The thing I get with Grace is like, she stutters every line. Oh my God. Oh my God.
I do think
she never has any character depth. There's
no progression. There's very limited progression. I think the idea actually on that, because I don't want to skip too far ahead away from the mansion part specifically right now, is that she is in some ways supposed to very loosely mirror Leon and his like overall kind of approach to what happens in RE2, where Leon is fresh out of academy. He has no idea about anything that's going on because the bioweapon thing hasn't even happened. Raccoon City is the first place where this happens. And so throughout a lot of the first game, Leon is shitting himself. Like, very outwardly, he's terrified throughout a lot of the story. And it takes, in very Japanese writing style, a very attractive woman to pull him out of that in Ada Wong. And so I think what they were trying to very lightly achieve is kind of that sense of character again, where it's like, okay, this character is someone who knows a limited amount of information about the horrors of, basically Umbrella. And there is supposed to be some level of progression, but there just really isn't any. And it's what sucks in that specific department is there is a fantastic scene. It's when they're in like at the bottom of the arc in the trash can like area where Grace verbatim quotes to Leon what Leon says to Ada in RE2. And it's actually a very moving moment, but Grace hasn't really had enough character progression to earn that moment, which makes it feel like it falls a little bit flat on its face, unfortunately. And even though the scene in isolation it's great, right? Because there isn't really a big like even when she kills the girl, right? Like there's no like triumphant moment of doing that of like fight like you've been chasing me the whole game, like I'm not saying should have dropped a one-liner on her like Leon or Jill, but
no, that comes 2 episodes later as Leon
exactly.
shown. Yeah,
just something to show. Okay, even though this is a horrendous situation, which any normal person would react like Grace is reacting for a majority of like the mansion section, etc., there would be some degree of like not adjusting. Actually, adjusting is probably the right word. Just adjusting to the insanity that she's witnessing, even though it happens over the course of a few hours. I think just that would have been enough to make someone like yourself as a cold caller, Monte, I think feel a little bit better about this character.
Let me just compare it to Alien. Okay, so you brought up Alien Isolation.
I was just about to say that. Yeah,
like Ripley becomes a badass,
but she doesn't start that way. She's fucking terrible.
Exactly, but my point is, there's a character arc where you feel her. To your point, Jamada, that over time, psychologically, you have to, if you're not going to die, if you were going to survive, you have to become psychologically inured. You have to harden yourself, right?
Yep.
In order to confront this reality. And we just don't get that. That's my issue.
And for me, that should have been the killing the girl moment. And I think the problem, and maybe this is actually why it doesn't happen, if you want to make this kind of like attempt at, or this is a real person's reaction to these things. Emily dies directly after that, dies directly after that.
Depends on the end.
Which is also the worst reveal in the game.
I hated that. I hated it so much. Like
I didn't hit the vitals, by the way.
Why do we care if Emily's still alive or not at the end? It's like,
I don't
we have to
know.
make you feel good about this thing that happened like 6 hours ago in the game. Like, why?
I don't know. Like, I guess like nice for Grace's character. Maybe again, like it can create if Grace actually ends up turning into a badass of some degree, right? Which this franchise has a history of turning like first time showers of the franchise into like long term standing. Like, oh, this person's cool now. A la Sherry Birkin, right? Sherry was also, of course, the voice in Leon's ear in this game. Then there being a there being an Emily figure or a Sherry figure for Grace, I don't mind. But then don't have Leon come in and gun her down and miss all the vitals. But to the original point, I think that Emily moment actually is what robs her of the ability to even have that triumph, right? And so I can kind of understand in that light, perhaps why there's not so much progression. But I think the fact that then what actually turns out of that is she turns into a damsel in distress for a majority of the rest of the game, where it's just like, Leon has to, Leon is tracking down obviously Victor and Zeno, but he then knows once he makes it to RPD that Grace is with them. So it's like, okay, now I have to rescue Grace, and she doesn't really do much until you get to the arc section.
And there are two bits I want to throw into that though, because one thing about the Emily section is that I had some real issues about, like I called this out while I was playing the game as well, which is when Emily died, like obviously there was this big attachment between Grace and Emily, and they were trying to really kind of show like her.
I don't even think that was earned, by the way, just as a side note.
And that is what is key about this, because it wasn't earned in terms of like, oh, protecting this girl. She obviously feels some kind of attachment to her. The development that came, because obviously this girl looks very much like the girls and the clones which come later. That development of these clones, and of course we know that the girl walking around, right, the monster is just a mutated version of one of these things, and we can hazard a guess that the orphanage obviously has a lot to do with this too.
Where do you think the girl got the really big dress from?
It's from the same clothing store that the Hulk gets his pants from.
Right.
If you're wondering.
Anyway, continue. Sorry.
Anyway, that's very, very insightful. You see, what about the economic differences of super large? Think about the poor chunks. These guys are like 2 stories tall. But the thing is, I don't think the character development for Emily actually comes hours after her death. So when that scene happens, which should develop Grace, we don't have the context really until those scenes later in the orphanage in terms of why should this matter to Grace? Why should this matter about Emily? And that felt a little bit disjointed. They probably should have foreshadowed the orphanage stuff. They could have maybe even had an orphanage scene flashback earlier on into the game, actually.
I'm glad you bring up the worst gameplay experience part of this game, the orphanage, which also, Jamada brings up the damsel in distress. Did you like the incredible narrative choice of damsel in distress inception, where you go from one damsel in distress and then you incept into another damsel in distress in the orphanage?
Chloe,
Funnily enough, and I actually see, I don't want to tangent, but this is one of the areas where I feel like we're not going to talk about it again, so I'd rather do it here than in a different place. That orphanage section, it's a bit boring. It just is what it is. It's supposed to be short. It's supposed to be short, and it's supposed to just basically, it's like a playable cutscene. Like that section could have happened in a cutscene. Yeah, it could have happened in a cutscene. But it's also where I want to give the devs a little bit of credit for what I would mostly say was really tasteful asset reuse throughout a lot of this game. I feel like in many different games where you have like revisits to previous areas, asset reuse is typically just done as a very easy time cost, saving measure. I feel like they got a lot of weight out of a majority of the places that they ended up revisiting. The orphanage is one of them, because you do it in RE2. You actually play it comically enough. It's almost 1-to-1. You go through a section as a child Sherry who's been abducted. She's been kidnapped. Orphanage.
Forcefully adopted, as I like to call it.
Forcefully adopted to this orphanage. And so you actually go through a very similar, like, kind of chase and escape section, like you do here, where you're completely defenseless and you got to hide. And I thought that the actual
all I
asset...
can think of is Resi 7, just welcome to the family, son, smashing it.
Yeah.
But the issue with the gameplay is that
yeah,
I don't understand the rules. It's one of the times where I just don't understand the rules of the game, because I kept dying because I've been trained. This game trains me in terms of gameplay that you kind of like slip by certain things, right? And the puzzle here is that I'm supposed to go into the hallway where these two little creepy dolls are, and then run away back under the table and then listen for footsteps that happen, and then they're gone. I'm not supposed to hide, in the hallway. I'm not supposed to be able to slip by them, except later in that same segment when I'm running to the ladder. Oh, I can just slip by them. Like, I don't understand the rules of the game, where they can kill me and where they can't. And it just becomes really confusing and very frustrating in terms of gameplay.
Okay, that first bit, it does say hide on your screen. The first time it does it to them.
The first time you hide under the table. I'm saying the second time you hide under the table.
Oh, so when you go downstairs and they drop from the ceiling, right? I mean, once
after that, when they go into the hallway and you have to trigger them to chase you and then hide again, is stupid. It's not intuitive gameplay.
I agree, and it's actually an area I feel like the devs do a really good job. Now, this is going to sound really egotistical. I like to consider myself a pretty good gamer, so I feel like a lot of intuitive stuff just kind of like hits me naturally. But yeah, that was a dumb area, and I even as I played,
it was probably the worst area of the game.
As I got to that door, because it's like there's two of those little clones at the door, and you have to trigger them to chase you.
Yes.
As I was running back, all I could think to myself was, there's going to be a clip of a game journalist getting stuck here, isn't there? Like, there just is. There's going to be a clip of a game journalist getting stuck here.
I had to do it a few times because I kept trying to, like, bait them out or find a patrol pattern.
And actually, baiting them out was actually quite difficult. So this is now you've just triggered the memory of this part of the playthrough for me.
Funnily enough, I didn't actually have to bait them out. I think I just waited long enough and they just went somewhere else. So I don't know what the hell happened with your place.
I walked around the corner. I sprinted around the corner, and then they turned around.
Yeah, that happened the first time and I died, and then the second time they weren't there. So I don't know what happened.
I shat myself. I shat myself and ran so fast back towards the table that they didn't follow me. So I had to go back, re-trigger them to chase me. And it was one of the few times where I actually felt like, damn, the scripting broke. Like, the scripting for the game was
also, here's the funny thing that I figured out, and this was what was my confusion, was that if you actually, like, just face the corner by the plant, one of them will walk past you on patrol, but then you're trapped between two of them.
Fun fact
there's
about
no way
that.
out of that. So I kept thinking I was doing something wrong.
So fun fact, because of the way that the RE engine is, I've actually been watching some insanity speedruns of the game, and a lot of the speedrun techniques are camera manip, where they react differently when they're on camera as to when they're off, which is a typical thing in game dev. This is a typical thing in game dev. Typically, this happens in like shooter games where if you are running away from people and your enemies are behind you, they are less accurate than they would be if you're facing them. If you're facing an enemy in a game, they are more accurate because it seems more fair. Because actually, if you're gunned down by like 3 things you haven't seen behind you, it feels really unfair. This is not dissimilar to that, where basically enemies have less awareness of you when they're not directly on camera. So if you just like point your head into the corner, you can sometimes, not all the places, but you can sometimes get away with that.
So I want to talk about the puzzles, because they don't respect your intelligence, and I really get annoyed in games where the puzzles are both bad and they don't respect player intelligence. And the thing is with this game, the puzzles are all incredibly easy to solve. Especially people who say, wow, look at the design of the hospital. It's literally just get cubes, put cubes in door, everything is sun, moon, and star. And the puzzles are, I have to look at 2 pictures in an office to see the combination.
Yeah.
And that's it. The puzzle is look at 2 pictures and then use your 1 brain cell to put them together into the machine. And again, I don't need this to be, this is not intended to be a very hard puzzle game. But if I think about other games like this recently, I think about Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, and that had
great puzzles. fantastic puzzles in that game.
They weren't hard, right, Jamada? But they were for
the most part really intuitive. They got you to explore a bit more as well. Generally, like they were really good. Yeah, they were.
I
really
think
good.
the most important game to actually put it towards that, because it's by devs which started off in the same country with series that started off at a similar time. Silent Hill F has some very advanced puzzles, and it has a difficulty slider on the puzzles. In fact, if those of you who watched back our Ghost of Yote review, I brought up the same thing then because it really annoys me. Silent Hill has the best way of dealing with puzzles of anyone in the modern gaming thing right now. They have a thing which says, do you want to do the puzzles or not? You can choose no if you want, but we can put them all the way up to difficult if you really want to.
Yeah.
Why don't more games do this?
Yeah.
Especially when so much of it is the puzzle design in this game. And for me, the point where my frustration just boils over is like the Braille puzzle, because it's everything that's wrong with this game in a nutshell. And you go into the office, right? And there's Braille. Okay, Braille is a substitution cipher where one letter in Braille equals another letter. And Grace is sitting there and you look at it, and again, it's just the words sun, moon, and star. Now, obviously, you can tell the difference as a human between moon and star because moon has two of the same letter in the middle. So you immediately know which one is moon. And then if you know that, then you can take the last letter, which is N, and put it on sun and see that the first letter of sun is the same as the first letter of star, right? So you could just deduce this, right? It's very easy. So my problem is I get into this room and it doesn't respect my intelligence. I don't even think it takes much intelligence to do this. And you just sit there and you're like, oh, well, I can solve this puzzle because hilariously in that same room, there's a journal and it's like, you don't even have to turn the page. Like it just automatically folds down to solve the puzzle.
Yeah.
So
Again,
like, okay,
I'm not defending the puzzles. This is another very good point,
there's
Monte.
more that's wrong. So, okay, I know the puzzle. It won't let me, but it won't let me solve the puzzle because Grace, remember, FBI agent. You would think an FBI agent would have basic deduction skills. No, she's too dumb, apparently. She says, oh, I need to go get the girl who could read Braille. I'm like, no, you don't. She's actually safe in that cell, so just leave her there. And, okay, so you have to go get her because apparently the game doesn't respect my intelligence. Grace is an idiot. And I have to go retrieve tiny blind girl to read the Braille. Why? Oh, because it's contrived so that she can get snatched by the girl, which wouldn't happen if I just solved the fucking puzzle and went through the door without having to go through the basement. This is why the game isn't scary either, because it's so stupid and it's so clearly telegraphed in advance. So I'm just sitting here just raging at this game at this point in time. Why can't I solve this puzzle? Oh, and then when I do it, it's the same shit with all the puzzles. Okay, so we get to an area, all right? There's some enemies. We kill them, or we get past them, and we do the thing. But then we have to go back to that area. What happens? Lights go out. Jump scare time. It's the same area, but ooh, it's different now. It can't ever be easy because it has to go all wrong at the exact wrong time, so it becomes predictable.
Okay. So I think that when the big switches happen with the lights go off and stuff like that, that's telegraph, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Actually, I don't think that's necessarily a problem. Now, the reason why, and this is really important because we've actually been slamming some negative points in here. The reason why I don't care about that aspect is what we were talking about, the atmosphere earlier, in terms of how good the graphics were, how good the sound design was, how good the graphic design was. I really love the level design too, because intuitively, as Jamada was saying, besides the orphanage bit, which was the real missing point from this, I think almost every Grace section, I clearly knew where was meant to be quote unquote safe. You've obviously got the Cupid doors, but you know when you are headed into danger, you just don't know what specific form that danger will take part in. And that's okay, because for me, I hate cheap jump scares. Cheap jump scares are not good horror. If you earn your jump scares by saying, these are the rules you're playing in. So, for instance, I think that the basement is fucking incredible for this, where you're saying, you are safe if you have the lights on here. You have to choose to give up your own safety to progress the story and then put yourself in danger. I fucking love that. In fact,
why is the light safe but not a flashlight? How come the girl doesn't hate flashlights?
She does react to it, but it's not strong enough. So you need stronger light, basically.
Oh, okay. Sorry, yeah, I didn't really understand the rules, because I'm standing there just shining a flashlight and say, go away. She just eats my head. I'm like, okay, well, what is that? Yeah. What kind of light makes her scared, or I don't understand.
Strong light, Monte. Strong light.
It is a strong light. It's an LED flashlight.
Monte, I'm sorry, mate. That is in the first thing that you pick up in the basement. It says that the lights are all UV lights down there, specifically to deal with her.
Yeah.
Now, look, I can't comment on the strength of the flashlight, but I want to digress. I actually think that basement area with that, despite getting down there and it being so contrived, I think the idea of having to juggle the power
cells,
plugs as like kind of that's the puzzle of the area. I think that's quite good. And I found with horror anyway, because this is actually my first horror franchise that I've played.
Oh, cool.
I've not really dabbled in horror generally, and I'm
okay.
very
Next game for you to play is Outlast. You will love that. You will love that.
We'll see.
Game.
We'll see. I've had my entire community was trying to egg me on to play all of the horror franchises. But I think what I found with horror, and I'm coining a content creator that I also watch, is that horror, 80% of the fear factor is in the audio. And like you were saying, the audio design down there is really great. And you said, I don't like cheap jump scares, really, really pissy. There's one thing that I kind of noticed, but then retroactively realized when I watched other people play through this section, is, and you guys had to have experienced it at least once or twice, is the girl will jump down on you from out of the tubes. And it will feel very cheap, right? Because I think you also lose a health state from it too.
Depends how close she is, yeah.
If you are paying attention, you hear her go to each of these tubes every single time without fail. And I really want to credit the devs for that, because that is really kind of just saying, hey, if you're paying attention, you're not going to get jump scared here. You will go the other way. You will go a different way to make sure you don't have to deal with this encounter.
On that note, my favorite scare during this game was in the basement section. I love the atmospherics down there. Like I said, I love this whole, you understand, you are putting yourself in danger to put the story forwards. At the end of the day, the power of a horror game is you have to press the W key. You are the one pressing the forwards thing, which is, of course, not something you see in a horror movie. That's why I've always loved horror games. My favorite scare was, I was coming back from, that bit with the forklift, where you have to turn the key, and then you have to kind of come back. There's that tunnel which leads from, I think it's there's the tunnel which goes between that and then the other bit too.
That's your favorite.
No, that was my okay. So my favorite. No. There's an unscripted bit which happens after that. So there's the bit obviously where she pulls someone out of it. I was using that tunnel for the entirety of the basement section. She can't get in there. I felt safe. Again, I understood the rules of where I felt safe and where I wasn't. There's a bit where effectively you turn, you go through the bits and you have to take the power cell out of that section with the forklift and run back the other way. So you've got to put all three of them, of course, back into the cell blocks bit. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take this out, leg it towards the tunnel. I'll be safe. The lights have only just gone out. I'll be safe. I take the power cell out, I leg it back, and of course, the part of the rule is I'm safe when I'm in the tunnel, not in the area just outside the fucking front of it. She drops down in the one bit, in the one place I thought I'm completely safe here. I misunderstood the rules slightly, and it really got me good, and that was an earned jump scare. I really enjoyed that because I understood the game I was getting into, and I understood that it was my mistake, and it got me good. I really enjoyed that.
Earned in the sense of it was, the price that you set was low, or like just so we're clear, because
for me, I had given myself a false sense of security, thinking that tunnel was somewhere that I was always going to be safe. Because I think, the Cupid doors are safe. This tunnel is safe. The area just outside of it. Yeah.
The only place in Resident Evil you are safe is the typewriter rooms. That's it. That is the rule of the entire franchise. And even then, sometimes
there are one or two typewriter rooms where you're not safe. By the way,
yeah,
they have that rule is broken. Doors,
yeah. Some of them, that rule is definitely ignored. I think towards the end in the arc is one of them for sure. But yeah, the underground section of the audio, fantastic. But like you were saying,
I do appreciate that point. But again, there are things that I really didn't like about that section. Even on my stream, you can see that I'm predicting exactly what's going to happen and when the jump scares are going to come, because it becomes so cliched. And it also really bothered me. That room with the processor with it's full of the
Oh, it's gonna
no. But I get there, and Grace has some line. It was like, oh, it smells terrible, and I'm like, just swim to the other side. There's that wheel over there, just swim across it. So I think to myself, oh, well, clearly it's dangerous liquid of some sort, right? But no, it just smelled bad, and she would rather run around and maybe get eaten by the girl than swim across the stinky liquid, because by the time you have to go around and then get the jump scare and then get the other forklift key and go through the body room and blah 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 blah, and then you get there and then you drain it, but then you get washed into the pit with all the liquid anyway, so you're already you just end up swimming in the liquid anyway. Why couldn't I just swim through it the first time? Why?
And then, of course, later you do actually just literally see like just an ocean of it flying towards you in the section after that too. It's
Which
not like
also
she's been avoiding that.
brings me to my next point about why this game isn't scary, because everything is a Chekhov's gun. And if you guys don't know what a Chekhov's gun is, so there's a playwright named Anton Chekhov, and the principle that he uses is he says, if there is a gun in a play, or in this case, any kind of piece of literature or narrative, the gun must be fired at some point during the narrative. It's to say that the whole point is, don't introduce things that are not used in the plot. Don't just fill your piece of art with extraneous bullshit that has no bearing. The thing about Chekhov's guns in a play or a novel, let's say, is that the gun could be a symbol of something. It could be a theme in addition to something that the characters use. When a Chekhov's gun is introduced, you don't necessarily know who is going to fire the gun. You don't know why it's going to be fired, and you don't know when it's going to be fired. So there is an element of surprise there. The problem with games that are filled with Chekhov's guns, and it's a uniquely video game problem that I haven't heard anybody talk about, is that you guys can answer this question. When a Chekhov's game is when a Chekhov's gun is introduced in a video game, who's firing the gun?
It depends on the gun. It depends
you
on
are
the
the
gun.
player. The player is firing the gun.
You're triggering the yeah.
You are triggering the thing. When are you triggering it? Right now. Almost always. The answer is within the next 5 minutes. And why are you triggering it? To kill things. Right? So, my point is there's not a lot of mystery. So the section that is emblematic of this, but it happens throughout this entire game, which is that it introduces a principle, and then there's nothing in a room that isn't going to be used. If there's a body on the floor, that body's coming back to life. When you are in the secret underground Victor Gideon lab with the blood stairs, you literally walk in to a room full of tanks with zombies, and there are these fire extinguisher-looking things on the walls that are the
like
disposal tanks. And there's a sign that says, in case of crisis, use disposal tanks. I'm like, all right, so no, let me finish. So you literally walk in and you're like, okay, well, all these zombies are coming back to life. And then you look at the walls and you're like, oh, they're disposal. I'm definitely going to use those. And then within 5 minutes, all the zombies are out and I'm fucking spraying them with a fire extinguisher. It's not scary because I know exactly what is going to happen. I know exactly what, and it's going to happen right now. It's like when you kill the girl, I literally said in my playthrough, okay, well, she's dead. So I'm going to walk into the next room, and now Emily's going to turn into a monster, because we know from being in the environment that there's that little hole in the other cell where the other girl escaped and then turned into a monster. Like, Emily's also going to turn into a monster, and it happens right away. So it's not scary. It's just super predictable, again, because everything is a Chekhov's gun in this game, which, does lead to, I would say, a refined gameplay experience. But the problem is that simultaneously what it does is, in addition to creating a focused game, it creates a game where it is incredibly easy to predict what happens, because there aren't like extraneous details, right?
So this is actually, it's funny you mentioned this, because a lot of the scare factor for me, I think when the game is designed like this, I actually kind of want to take a big picture look at this first. And it's that Resident Evil as a franchise, to me, as I've learned about it and I've played through it and its history, is the franchise that started the modern horror game cliches of, if something will, it will, right? Or if something can, it will, right? Inside of horror games specifically. Now, that's not to say that it introduced this as a concept entirely. No, of course not. But so, like you said, it does create this level of refinement in the gameplay loop where it's like, okay, if I walk through this room once and this person is on the floor, right, and it doesn't get up this time, when I return, and I might need to pass it through.
Jamada, it's I will be returning, and
Yes,
they will be
yes.
coming back to life.
Yes, exactly.
This
Then
is why I double tapped them on the floor. They get up early.
so one, you can obviously get ahead of the curve and double tap the master on the floor. But two, then what I actually think, I think one, it actually creates an okay scenario if something else that's worse goes on first, that brings you back to that location, right? From a design perspective, I'm okay with that. But then two, I think in general, the game does do a pretty poor job in these grace sections specifically, because as Leon, you're basically just your action man. So nothing really matters. But as Grace, there's not too many times where there's actually a subversion of expectations if you're as, cerebral as Monte, or even I. Like, I was scared from the immersion less so than I was from the actual, like, understanding or the setup of these things. The jump scares really came at me from like, oh fuck, this enemy was like behind me and I had no idea he was there because I didn't hear him creep up on me.
Did you predict
like
the bulldozer?
The bulldozer is maybe the
the
best.
bulldozer was
jump
pretty
scare in the
good.
game, by the way.
Yeah. I've actually got to agree.
This is an
it was pretty up
interesting
there.
thing, by the way. Just
go
one
ahead.
quick aside on that.
Mhm.
So obviously you have to start the game on your regular difficulties. If you complete it on the first time through, you do unlock insanity difficulty. It is actually worth noting that some of the scripted events actually get some differences to them. So the bulldozer scene, when you shoot, because you have to shoot the guy in the bulldozer for it to stop. It doesn't stop on insanity until you then you look under the blade, you have to duck under it and shoot the thing in the bulldozer, otherwise it will keep coming at you. There are a couple of scenes like that in insanity
That's
where
cool.
kind of it levels up things there, which
cool.
actually I actually wonder whether you'd prefer it on insanity, because it feels like actually they've
And
amped
you
up
know
the
what?
complexity of things.
I'm glad you've brought this up, because do you know what actually robbed a lot of the horror aspect of this game to me? Even, I think there are multiple ways to do horror, right? Before I even touch on this, RE7 is a very good example. There's a lot of body horror. There's a lot of like disgusting horror. And Monte, just in case, because you are a cold caller to the franchise, effectively, right? RE7 really went out of its way to make sure that the atmosphere and the environment that you were in it felt so alien that you had no other emotion than to
Fungal
feel
infection in the bayou. It was really different.
You had no other emotion other than feeling a great amount of discomfort when you were interacting with a lot.
I mean,
of these
I love
things.
that. I love David Cronenberg and body horror stuff. So that's
so,
my jam.
So 7, you might also enjoy. So I thought that's one way to do horror. For me, I actually came from the difficulty. I thought that the baseline level of the game was actually a little bit too easy in these very adjustable ways. Like, for me, for example, I feel like the girl should always one-shot you. I think the second that the girl picked me up and bit my shoulder and knocked my head off, I went, oh, I can tank a hit here, and there's actually not really a problem about it. Like,
I agree with
I
that.
know, I know now in future sections, because, the second that she, the second that she shows back up, I suppose, when Leon blew her head off, I did think she was dead. But the second that she came back, I now knew when I was in that basement section, okay, yes, she is like terrifying. The sound design like does a lot to unnerve me. I can walk out of this room and I can like tank a hit and then just use the iframes to walk past her. That's a degree to me that removes a layer of that horror.
Totally agree. That's a good point.
I think there are some aspects where and
also,
actually,
it was, frankly, it was just annoying because sometimes I would want to reset, and like she would bite me and then I'd be like, well, I don't want to use a health item, so I can just reset. And so then I would have to just stand there because she has a really long time between when she'll attack.
Oh my
so
god!
I'm literally just standing there with my flashlight being like, please kill me. Please kill me.
So
please
it's supposed to be a safe net, obviously.
Off my head and be like, haha, that's
and again,
hilarious.
Jamada, if you want that, realistically, play Alien Isolation, which is and this is actually the problem. I love horror games, but this is the problem with every horror game I play. I have to compare it to Alien Isolation because it is such a fucking good game. The alien always one-shots you. If it finds you, you are dead. And if you hide in the same place too many times, it learns about that. So when you think you're safe in the vents, you're not safe there. Again, that assumes false sense of security. Now, I loved, again, the atmosphere, because for me, like you were saying, I'm very similar in that. My fear factor from this game came from the immersion and the unknown of these sounds happening everywhere in an environment which you had to learn about, and the way, again, like the way that the lighting and the audio worked very well. Yeah, I agree. There were probably a couple of things where I'm like, yeah, I probably should have just got one shot by that. You only really died if you panicked in this game, I found. If you panicked, that's when you actually died. And I think, like, that was good for the entry level of difficulty.
There's one cheap moment, and I'm gonna assume we all died to this. The tyrant chase in Raccoon City.
Yep. But it was. I honestly didn't care because it was so funny when you got
the animation was actually fantastic. Like he just ripped you apart.
It was so good.
But even that, like,
wait, do we all have a clip of that, by the way? Because that'd be so funny.
We
Editor,
might all have.
Make sure there's a clip of each one of us. I know I put mine in there.
I
all
started
just getting
laughing
completely split in half.
I was like, this is great. I love
Yeah,
this.
it was legitimately really good.
Yeah, I think I went, oh.
It was like a Mortal Kombat
no.
It's like, we sat through the wall. That's the next place I gotta go through. I didn't fucking do the logical leap of things of, by the way, run away from the sharp object,
that
which is
rod
about to
really
make contact
sharp.
from you.
Yeah. Yeah, so to that end, yeah, I think that's one area where I felt like, for me, the game lost a lot of its fear factor, despite it doing so many of the other things pretty much like, I don't think they could have done the audio design even down to the thud shackle noise of the girl chasing you down. Like, that's unnerving as hell. And even though there is a setting in the game you need to change if you're a headphone wearer, if you play the game
3D
on TV,
audio,
yeah, the 3D audio thing. Otherwise, the audio sounds really, honestly, bad. But once you turn that setting on, you can barely tell. And now, normally this is a bad thing, but in this case, it's a good thing. You can't tell how close or far behind you she is. It's just thud, thud, and that is an unnerving.
Because
feeling.
then, of
But
course,
again,
your instinct is to turn around and see where she is, and then you have this kind of like, oh
Exact-
god, oh
ex-
fuck,
exactly,
and you keep like
exactly.
looking back,
So-
and that's part of the horror.
to
loop.
not loop back, even down to some of the sections where they tried to recoup some of that horror aspect back. I feel like in the mansion area, and even to a degree once you're still in the basement, though, if you handle your blood well, I feel like you do get to a certain point, and I guess we'll talk about the mechanic. There's probably not going to be another place to talk about it. The blood collecting mechanic, as a mechanic, I actually like, but obviously from a logical leap, god damn, like, guys, come on, like, find something better. Like, the old
you
system
don't make
was
your
right there.
bullets out of scrap and blood? What?
Well,
like,
okay, guys,
the old
this is from the
system-
franchise where Ethan Winters sticks his disembodied hand on with some liquid and heals himself.
Well, yes, but that's a post-established thing of, oh yeah, Ethan Winters has been dead since the 7th game, and he's completely made
he's
out
actually
of this
just
bio
mold man.
material.
He's actually
Yeah,
just he's mold man.
mold man. So it makes sense that he does that.
By the way, Ethan, my goat, when you compare the two like first-person protagonists of like Grace and Ethan, I'm like, Ethan, my goat, just shrugs off the fact that he's lost. You need to play this, Monty. Like, he just loses his hand. He loses his hand, staples it back on, and gets back to it.
You
love
might
this
have
shit.
to.
I'm down for some Evil
You
Dead
might have to play-
memory bullshit, man.
You
The
might have to play
campiness is
7 and 8.
fine. That's not my problem. If you commit to the campiness, I'm on board. You know what I mean?
But that, like I was saying earlier, though, I think that's the thing they've always struggled with, is finding that balance between, you know, the survival horror that the franchise effectively made its name on, and then, you know, and it's funny. When I played through the original franchise, when I did my playthrough, I did it all on stream, and so in some ways I had certain things said to me, which I was openly okay with saying. The franchise is 30 years old. Or having said to me, I was fine with it. And the topic of Resident Evil 5 and 6 came up. And as you know, I'm sure, obviously Nymaera, you know, and I've said it here, 5 and 6 are effectively just action games. They drop a lot of that horror mantra. There are aspects of those games and probably like sequences which are horror. But because those games were made during the golden age of Call of Duty, Halo, Battlefield, they wanted to get in on the hype, right? And so that divide was present from RE5, honestly, which I think was a 2008 or a 2009 release, all the way up until 7, where they just went full survival horror again. And they kind of realized, oh, okay, both of these sides of the coin are what pay us the money. We need to make sure this is there. And so I just don't necessarily feel like, to me, 9 has like done a horrible job of making sure, you know, it's all there in the package.
I just don't like half the package. What can I say?
That's where we're at with it.
Like, I get what you're saying as a Resident Evil fan, but as somebody who, or as somebody, I'm not even gonna call you a fan, somebody who's played all the games recently, but as somebody, you know, coming in cold, it's just like that is relevant to me. What's relevant is that I get these scenarios with Grace that I don't find scary for the reasons I stated. I don't find meaningful in terms of puzzle challenge, and I don't find her character
Well-
interesting or developed. So what am I doing playing these sections? It's on a narrative level, it's unsatisfying. On a puzzle level, it's not very
I think,
stimulating.
do you
On
know
a
what the
fear
puzzle
level, it's
Mhm.
not terrifying. So why am I here? It's just annoying. What it
Yeah,
ends up being for me is a frustrating and annoying experience. And then I get to the Leon sections and I'm like, yeah, shotgun the giant spider. Let's go.
I think the disappointing part, because we never really dove on the puzzles, was I feel like with Resident Evil puzzles, there's 2 or 3 ways, or just puzzles in games in general, there are 2 or 3 ways to go about it. But in Resident Evil, they've typically handled it as such. You either figure out the puzzle in the room because there are context clues in the environment to help you figure it out. Which in this game, to memory, I don't think they do. Like, what? I don't think there's a single puzzle where it's like you walk into a room, there's a puzzle, and you have to figure it out based on looking at the things in the room.
I mean, there's some in Resi 7 where there's like, you remember like the old Assassin's Creed puzzles, you have to like angle things a certain way. They
Yeah.
do some things like that where it's like you walk into the room and you figure it out
the
through some various context
the
clues.
angle puzzle, those angle puzzles were fun, but that's what I'm saying. They don't do anything like that. There's no like RE1 mansion style puzzles where like I think about the night puzzle, or it's hard to call it a puzzle, but like I can't even remember what pops out of it, but it's like it basically effectively opens a safe, but you have to have the knights positioned in a certain way to allow that to happen. And there are context clues in the room that give you the answer. You're not just like guessing. So RE1 doesn't do that. And so then the other direction that you go is actually forcing exploration. And I don't feel like the game did a good job of doing that, especially when the mansion area itself is actually pretty well designed. And there are a lot of diverse encounters inside of the mansion, which really makes me feel kind of disappointed because of that very simple fact. Like, a lot of attention to detail clearly went into making that first Grace section emulate the feeling of going through RPD for the first time or going through the Spencer Mansion for the first time. And so when the puzzles are, you walk into a room, swipe with the good old pencil trick, that we all learned from that one movie when we were like 10 years old, or in Monty's
favorite
case, he
part
was
of that
probably in
one
his
was
20s.
By the way, hang on. I actually solved that in a different way, by the way. So I know that you had problems with the Braille thing. You can basically find that out from when you're in the save room. There's that magazine on the table.
Yes.
You actually have like
Yes.
the 3 pictures of the people with those symbols. You
Yes.
can basically do the puzzle from those symbols in that order. That's your first one. Like, so I found that then I had this pencil. I'm like, this is in my inventory. What am I going to do with this? And I was like, well, I'm just
I
going
already
to.
figured it out too. But the funny thing is that this is just these gameplay frustrating moments, and I think for me the Grace sections are just like it just the mounting frustration from all of these different factors, and this is another aspect of it. So I like you, Nymaera, I had already figured that out. Okay, so then you have to puzzle the pencil, and I'm doing the rubbing, right? But it won't let me stop doing the rubbing until I've rubbed like the entire page. I can also see the words. I understand.
Yeah.
Will it let me leave the book? I'm like, get me out. Get me out. No, I have
I'm
to
just saying
keep
that would have gone
rubbing it
hard. That
forever.
would have gone hard as fuck on Nintendo DS.
That would have gone hard on DS. Monty, I'm going to call that one a skill issue, buddy. Make sure you swipe every letter. Make sure you swipe every letter off of that page before you come out of the book. All right.
But
we don't need no up
me
down
like I'm an
scrubbing. We need side to side, all the way down, 100% clean sweep, so you know what's in that book. All right.
But it treats you as the player as just so dumb, because it's like, just in case you don't understand, you can't just intuit what happened or see part of a word and understand it. You will be forced to rub this entire page before you can leave.
It's almost I mean, I feel like I don't mind, simply because I feel like especially as I've played more and more games as I've grown up. Because League of Legends robbed me of a lot of my game category, believe it or not.
Yeah, see, I got to League later in my life, so I experienced a healthy game wealth in my childhood.
Not me. I got my franchises in up until I was
one
about
quick
13.
aside here, by the way.
And then I could.
Look, the Braille thing you were talking about earlier, Monty, this actually, because I actually think this is a trend in gaming in general, with the puzzle thing.
Yes.
When I was a kid, how old do you think when did Ruby and Sapphire come out? Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, 2003, 2004, right?
4, yeah.
I would
I would have been like 8 years old. Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, Gen 3 of Pokemon, had a Braille puzzle that you had to figure out yourself to unlock the Reggies, the Golem legendaries, within Gen 3. You didn't get them for free. You had to have like a Wailord and a Relicanth in your party. You had to read the Braille platform, which was all in the manual, and it didn't give you the hints for that during the game. That is something that children were doing in the early 2000s. I think games have got to the point where we are...
Wait till I tell you about LucasArts adventure games.
Oh yeah, for sure. Stuff like Monkey Island stuff, right? I think time has gone on,
if you want to talk about non-intuitive puzzles, talk about Maniac Mansion or Day of the Tentacle, right? Like, and I'm not advocating. I'm not saying like, ooh, I really like these super non-intuitive puzzles. I actually don't think that's game.
But there are limits, right? There are definitely points where you think actually the trend has now got to the point where it feels it's not achieving what it's meant to. These feel like, and look, I love the atmosphere of this game. I love this game. I'm going to play this game again on Nightmare. I am actually really enjoying this. However, I do see a world in which it wasn't that hard to make a lot of the key parts of this game significantly better, which is my main drawback with it, which is my point as well. I'm just on the side where the immersion and my just overall horror experience, I love that as a horror connoisseur. I love the they put up.
I think we can start to wrap this up because for me, this is a really polished experience. And I want to bring up the fact that some people were complaining, oh, it's cost $70. My first playthrough, the in-game time was it said when I finished the game, it took me 9 hours and 11 minutes. When I was on stream, I think I was streaming it for about 13 hours. So I'm not sure, I don't think it counts like when you go back or like when you die and reset. I'm not sure.
I think it's just raw time on like if you died, it doesn't count that time. It just goes back to the previous save.
Yeah.
As far as
and maybe it doesn't count the time where you're reading stuff. I don't know.
It definitely doesn't. It definitely doesn't. Sorry to cut you off again, but it definitely doesn't. Because I read so much stuff. I was in file pages for at least like 2 hours of my playthrough.
I found it weird that there was like this 4-hour time difference between what the game said. But anyway, so it actually took me 13 hours is the answer. It took me 13 hours of playing this game, 12, 13 hours. So but people were saying, well, is that good value for $70? I mean, my problem with a lot of games, and as somebody who really likes narrative games, which again, this is where my frustration with the plot comes, and I count it so heavily against this game, is because some people are going to play games because they love that horror experience. Like, you Nymaera. To me, it's not scary, so I don't get that experience. And then also the plot is dumb and lame, and so I don't enjoy that. And then so what am I supposed to enjoy, right? Which is the answer is Leon chopping things with his hatchet, which I did enjoy. But people will complain, hey, this isn't enough gameplay. But I do think it has good replayability, number one. And then number two, I have 2 kids. People have jobs. One of my frustrations with games is that people, like the developers, think they need to just add open world padding to make a game 60 hours, 80 hours long.
I'm done with open world.
And the thing is, because I play games a lot of times for narrative, I don't want to be in a situation where I'm playing a game and there's a side quest and I think, if I don't do this, am I going to miss like a really cool story element? For example, The Witcher 3. Now, The Witcher 3 is probably my favorite game of all time, but that's definitely true of that game. And because that game is so well written, if you don't do that side quest, it's not necessary, but it does, many of them inform Geralt's character or what's going on in the main quest. It dimensionalizes that. And I want that depth, right? But most games are not The Witcher 3. So they're just stupid side quests that you go on that have no relevance to the main plot, or they're, collectibles. And, as much as I liked Indiana Jones and the Great Circle for the main plot and the puzzles, it was very guilty of like open world padding, right? Which was the least pleasurable part of that game. And I wish that game had been more like Resident Evil in terms of being very tightly wound around the main premise. And what Resident Evil Requiem doesn't do is waste your time. And I super appreciate that because it's a focused, polished experience. And I think a lot of older gamers identify with this problem, which is that, okay, so I'm playing this long game, but I have to go away for a couple weeks. I can't play this game for a couple weeks for whatever reason. So I come back to it and I fucking forget how to play this game because
Right.
it has,
Yeah.
no, seriously,
Yeah, yeah. No,
if you
I
look
get
at
it. I'm
yeah.
just laughing at the relatability of in some games, actually. Yeah.
no, like I love the combat system from God of War or Ghost of Yote, for example, but it's like the R trigger and the L trigger bring up sub menus for the styles and different weapons, and that's super fun when you have the muscle memory for it. And the game keeps adding layers of complexity, which is a deeply satisfying experience. But if I've added all these layers of complexity, if I've added all these weapons in God of War, well, I come back to and abilities. I come back to the game after a week or two, and I'm like, shit, my muscle memory isn't there anymore. And yet now I'm at the most complicated point of this game in terms of combat, which is cool when you remember it, but it makes it, the inertia that you feel to get back into that game is pretty intense. And I think that's why a lot of people just end up giving up on games. That's my personal theory.
Yeah.
So this game respects your time in a really awesome way. And I guess I'm on the side of a $70 game that's going to provide me with 13 hours of solid playthrough plus replayability in the future if I'm into it. I'm not that person, but many people are, right, for this game. If I like the game more, I would be psyched to play it again, right? Is a very good thing because you're still paying what, like $5 an hour for entertainment, which is
Less than
cheap.
a movie ticket. So
Yeah, it's less, like it's cheap for entertainment. So I don't really have complaints about the cost versus, obviously 70 is expensive for if you're a child, but if you're an adult, like I would much rather have a 13-hour awesome.
I mean, it's still not cheap, but it's much more palatable that way.
No, but I'm just saying, like, this game being 25 hours because of a bunch of padding just makes it worse. It doesn't make me feel like I get more value for money, is my point.
And on that note, in terms of the padding, this is one of the things which I know there are going to be a lot of, I know you're talking about like not really agreeing with the whole deuteragonist thing in terms of changing the style. One of the other things about horror as well is about if you have a full-on horror experience constantly, it's very draining, and eventually at some point it becomes grating, and actually, why would you do that? Every horror thing has to have some moments of respite. There are some parts of the genre which are literally just hack and slash beginning to end, but they are meant to be subversive for that reason. The accepted point of horror is that you do need to give the audience a break at some point. I liked the way that, because you're talking about the time efficiency and how it respects it, if you start as Grace and you go through an area and you face some enemies, you get a very cathartic release as Leon being like, fuck this, I'm going to destroy this entire area. Going through the mansion and dealing with everything I didn't kill as Grace was really satisfying. And when you're playing as Leon, you're an action style. When you're playing as Grace, you are a scared horror protagonist. And I think that I really liked that because it meant that balance of tension, you're not constantly on edge if you're someone who did buy into the horror of this. It gives you that mental reset because, let's be honest, Leon is there as a really cathartic point. It's great to return to that character as well, but it's great that he's come in as a proper badass because it actually allows you to balance the horror equation.
Yeah, and actually to that replayability point, one thing none of us brought up throughout this entire conversation is the first-person, third-person toggle. Now, I don't know how you guys actually experimented with it, if you did at all.
I just played the game as it recommended.
As it recommended.
First person, Leon. Because I was like, okay, this is the experience the dev wants me to have. I will play it this way.
Absolutely. So I'm going back through the game very slowly on my second playthrough. And I'm playing the game now as third person Grace and first person Leon, which is a bit of a trip because it kind of just plays as a first person shooter at that point because Leon is, well, he's Leon. But first off, the third person experience for Leon, I actually think just clears the first person experience. One, the game is very clearly designed, like Monte says, for that experience. But also even down to things like I kind of prefer, or like I would have kind of preferred if they gave us like almost Doom style executions in first person instead of like kind of snapping out of the camera. If anyone who's played first person Leon, you'll know when you do things like melee attack, when you do things like hatchet attack, whatever it is, it will bring you back out very quickly and then snap you back in. And I wonder what that does for people with like motion sickness and stuff like that. That probably has to mess people up to
I
to
think
a
it's been fun.
degree.
But on that note, there's some really good tech again, just in terms of going back to how well built the game is.
Sure.
The cutscenes are done very well between first person and third person, because the cutscenes are also changed from that too. If you're first person for Grace in the hotel, it is a first person cutscene. If you're in third person, it does that too. It does. It also changes with the outfits you load into the game too, which of course you can change between runs as well. It's very well done to compensate that, and the cutscenes feel right with them in both locations.
And to stay on those details point then as well, as Grace, when you first bump into the girl and you run out of that room, she's stumbling all over the place. You don't really experience that when you're playing the game in first person, but in third person, she literally almost like borderline trips and falls and gets back up and keeps on running towards the room. So there is an added layer of replayability there where it's probably worth playing back through the game, more so if you're a fan, less so if you just kind of enjoyed the game above average. Just to see what the minor details are, and just to see what you would miss, especially in the Grace sections, and how she reacts to the environment around her. Because I feel like whilst there is a good amount of replayability through that, the other area of replayability is simply just a mansion, right? Not sure how much you guys got done in the mansion. I'm actually curious because I'm a very big completionist head.
I normally am, but because we had to get things done to do a review for it, I actually skipped a lot, and that's one of the reasons I want to replay it. Because have you heard of like the final puzzle and stuff like that?
Yeah,
too,
stuff like the final
rewards?
puzzle. Yeah. So in my playthrough, I actually killed the big baby as Grace. I crafted,
the chunk, yeah.
I crafted the Requiem bullets, and I went over there, and I blew that thing.
Can you just sneak up behind it and stab it with the blood?
You have to do 3 hemolytic injectors. There's also another.
So I didn't even know that. Okay,
and there is another thing too. You know what one-shots him? If you bait him into an area of the map, you can throw a glass thing at it, and the guys with the gurneys, they will kill them for you. Those motherfuckers who are there going, "Shut up, it's too loud," they will fucking one-shot the bosses. Like the chef in the one side, Chunk in the other. Those guys are nasty as hell.
So I went there, I killed it, and then as Leon, I killed the chef. So it's like, okay, maybe on this playthrough, I want to go and kill the chef as Grace, right? I want to go and craft the bullets and use the resources I have to kill Grace. Not kill Grace. Though the one bullet Leon gives us, pretty funny. But
oh my god,
kill the chef. And then do
I
the
do
other one
like how
as
the
Leon.
enemies, go different places. So the chef, I don't know. In the chef in my game, I didn't kill him until the chapel when Grace is trying to break into the door.
Either,
So that's the other thing. I'm curious on, okay, if I kill that thing as if I don't kill that thing, does it always come out there? Because I don't think the chef ever came out in my playthrough, because I killed him as Leon before I went out.
No,
you actually need to kill him in the mansion to get the pantry key, though. So you don't actually get the chance to do the pantry if he's killed.
But it's just really funny because there's this hilarious moment in the game because it's where you're on the roof shooting the rifle to like defend Grace. But I had this super funny moment. So the chef came up and I was like, what happens if I just don't shoot him? And so he grabs Grace and then just like cuts her in half with the knife. I did all kinds of stuff, man, just to see what happened. But it was really funny because there are these stock lines that Leon says, as part of the programming. So one of the ones is while he's up there, he says, "Hang in there, Grace." Right. And so, but the problem is the line triggered while she's getting cut in half.
God.
I'm sure we can edit it in now, but I was just laughing my ass off because she's literally just getting chopped in half. And he's like, "Hang in there, Grace." I'm like,
yes, that's one thing. I mean, they did do it pretty much since RE4. But it's one of the things I'm really glad they continue to keep is those very graphic death scenes, because I think the death scene animations from 4, I don't recall them being super present in 7 and 8 because you're in first person. So
you just die really horribly in first person instead.
So I'm glad that they brought those forward from what is effectively 4, 5, probably 6 as well. Haven't played the game, so I don't know how gruesome those death scenes are. But in 4, they really made a point to kind of push the envelope on. If you die in 4, you're going to watch Leon, who a lot of people already loved at that point, die in the most gruesome, terrible way possible.
There's a famous scene with Ada Wong dying in a laser corridor where if you just don't do the reaction time, the lasers go by her and she falls into pieces, chunks of meat.
It's fantastic.
This doesn't happen in so many other video games. They're just like, yep, you failed the quick time event.
That's why I enjoyed watching people die. That's why I intentionally would do these things in this game, because it was really funny.
Yeah. So I'm glad they kept that forward. And hell, even that's another thing where I think the replayability kind of comes in, because it's like, okay, if you're a little bit sick like Monte is, right, and maybe you didn't get all of the death animations, you're like, you know what, I didn't die a lot in this section. You know what,
good question,
I never died to a licker. Let me go all the way to the third.
Okay,
the third
with that
arc.
in mind, what is your favorite death animation in the game? Go.
Oh, it's got to be one of the. There's a plethora of different chainsaw ones.
Oh yeah,
very vanilla,
my God.
very vanilla. I know, but chainsaw ones really solid.
Side note: the chainsaw on chainsaw violence fight. If you take the chainsaw out of the fuel yard, that was aura farming supreme.
Yeah, that's really good. Frankly, I didn't die enough in the game, so the only one that I remember was getting kind of cheesed by the chainsaw. Seems as I actually got to see it and I reacted it the first time. The tyrant ripping you in half.
God, that was so cool.
Yeah, it's the two that I actually got to experience and was like, oh my God, like they've kept that in.
What about you, Monte? You experienced a lot of
No,
them.
that
What
was
your
the
favorite
girder one was just too funny.
Yeah? I tell you one which was actually really gruesome because I just thought I'd be safe from it. If you fall into the grinding teeth of the processor with like the arm stretching out. Yeah, that one when like Grace falls into the processor, that shit was so brutal. That was pretty nuts.
This is what I'm saying is this is the way I was entertaining myself in a lot of these sections, is just being like, oh, I wonder if there's a cool animation for me.
This is another valid form of horror which you can enjoy the game for. Like gore has been a well-established, slasher horror has always been a version of horror that's been very popular. And this game does that really well.
All right, so let's get this final ratings, because for me, again, if this had just been a Leon game, and this is why people I think tell me play RE4, right? This is probably like a 9 out of 10. Even because it's the campiness, so I forgive the kind of stupid writing and the dumb anime tropes. But the problem is, like, I think the gray sections are legit a 5 out of 10. They're just annoying. They annoy me deeply, and I find them frustrating and pointless. And so I think it's like a 7 out of 10, maybe. And if you're cold to the franchise, I honestly believe that most people will probably have the experience that I had. It's the super fans that are inflating this.
I think I'll go, because I feel like as a cold cooler, the problem with this installation of RE is that it's in its story, what little there is, it is effectively kind of like the film before the Avengers. Like that's what RE9 effectively boils down to, unfortunately. So even though in its self-contained way, it's a pretty bloody good experience, all in all. I think both as a cold cooler, in my opinion, though again, there are things that does do that, as an adult, you might feel a little bit disrespected. The puzzles aren't challenging. I think there's not really a particularly solid difficulty curve to the game, which is a shame because I don't think this game has the system which older Resident Evils used to have, where if you don't die for a while, the game just silently gets harder. Like it will spawn extra enemies in. It will make the evolve rate of certain enemies higher, for example. It will do all of these things to just kind of challenge the player. 4 was the game that really actually put that system in place, as far as I've been educated. But I didn't really feel like that was something that was present or happening in 9. As a Resident Evil fan, though, I think it strikes the notes well enough. And I think the best way that I can describe a lot of this game to RE fans, and as someone myself who's just started playing the franchise, is that it's very inoffensive to the set precedents of the franchise, right? With Leon being the main action guy, they went back to the most popular version of gameplay action side that they've had, which was the over-the-shoulder camera since RE2 Remake. And with Grace, they've really tried to hone in on the horror that kind of saved the franchise in 7, right? Though they didn't go the whole body horror route, they just kind of went for the more, your lack of resources and this big scary thing walking around the area is your tension. I still think that's a suitable enough, trope that's been set when you think about things like Mr. X, Nemesis, Lady Dimitrescu in 8, right? All these passive big enemies that walk around these areas. So for me, I would probably give it a very solid 8.5. Maybe even a 9 if I was feeling super generous. The reason why I don't give it a 9 is because I think RE4 is the 9. And I don't think it's quite as good as RE4. I think it's the best installment in this series since RE4 / RE4 Remake. So when I say RE4, I mean the RE4 Remake, not the original. Sorry, original stands. So if you loved RE4, you will still love this game. If you loved RE4 and RE7, you will adore this game. And I think as a cold caller, it's still all right as an experience. It just doesn't really challenge you in the way that I think a Resident Evil game has historically probably challenged other people, and it definitely didn't challenge me in that way.
I'm also sitting at an 8.5. And that's because while Monte brings up so many important points, and so much of this episode has been actually very valid criticism, and that is actually very important. If you understand what this game is trying to be, and you just say, look, I'm here for the suspension of disbelief, I'm here for aura farming, hype moments, blood, guts, and gore, and some really, really solid gameplay surrounded by this audio and visual design, I think this game gets much better. The trick to understanding and really valuing Resident Evil Requiem is don't pay too much attention to the story. Just let it happen. Let it happen in the background and enjoy the fact that actually this is a wonderfully built game. It runs smoothly. It has very good variety of encounters. It has somehow blended my first Resident Evil game was actually Resi 7. I went back and played some stuff after that, but Resi 7 is actually very, very special to me. It's one of those horror games. I'm like, yeah, damn, this is an introduction to a part of the genre I hadn't been to there before. I liked how they brought that into a game and didn't just discard it to bring back Leon. Bringing back Leon, though, was also great. It was my first game playing as Leon in terms of on release before backtracking to it. I'm glad that they've allowed one of the most iconic characters in gaming to grow older and still be a hero. That's actually very important here, too. I really enjoyed the gameplay. Just don't pay too much attention to the story, and it'll be a much better experience, as it was for me.
Well, there you go, guys. I do think, obviously the Resident Evil fans have been very well served, it seems, by this game. But our purpose here on Post Game Clarity is to go the deeper dive into these things. We're not going to get caught up in the hype of the game release, trying to have a clear-eyed view of games as art. So if you enjoy this content, we have other episodes of Post Game Clarity on this channel, and stay tuned for more, obviously.